right now. We've got to talk about, I wouldn't say a good friend of mine. I'd say I've met him a couple of times. We used to have him on our show all the time over at 97.1, another station I used to work for here in L.A. Norm Macdonald was one of the funniest men in the world, and all the top comics in town never hesitated when you asked them, hey, who's the funniest guy in Hollywood? Without exception. And I don't know anybody who said any different. They all said Norm Macdonald, every one of them. And one of the guys who loved him and always had him on the show, is a huge fan, is Jay Leno. And Jay's with us. Jay, how are you, sir?
Good. I mean...
Horrible. I didn't even know he was sick. Were you aware
it's so
of that?
sudden.
No, I didn't know he was sick. He kept it all inside.
Yeah.
And, he was a private person, and, we didn't have a lot in common other than we're both comedians, but there's a certain bond I think you have with other comics. No matter, you can go years without seeing them, and then the minute you see them, the whole thing starts again. And I was flattered when he brought his mom into a club to see me and meet me, and I thought, that was a huge honor to me that he would bring his mom into the show.
Oh, that's cool.
One thing about comics, they love their moms. Almost every comic I know has some sort of special relationship with their mom.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I didn't make it in stand-up comedy.
Well, there you go. I rest my case. But, truly the best, truly a real original. I remember when I got the Tonight Show, Don Omar would come in and just scream at me, call your friend Norm, tell him to lay off OJ, because, and Norm, God bless him, he just pounded away.
He got fired over it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was, at that point, Omar was a good friend of OJ's, and there was still a lot of people at that time that thought, it can't possibly be true, but...
Right. He was relentless, though. I mean, every single Weekend Update, he had about 5 or 6, sometimes 8 killer jokes about O.J. Simpson.
No pun intended there either.
Right.
Yeah,
he was unbelievable.
But, that's the great thing. You can get away with anything if it's funny.
Right.
And Norm could get away with anything. I mean, he said things that I think if other comics had done, and not that he didn't suffer the slings and arrows of cancel culture and all that too, but not nearly to the extent, because you'd go, you see what Norm Macdonald said about, yeah, but it was funny, wasn't it? Yeah, and people go, yeah, it was funny. Yeah, it was pretty funny. And
right.
You know what it was? It was like, he was kind of like the Bob Dylan of comedy. He was doing lyrics and words and phrases that nobody else in comedy was using. And it wasn't that he told jokes as much as just told stories in a funny way and had a just funny inflection. I mean, I could listen to him for hours. There's certain comics like that. Steve Landisberg was like that. Just a lot of guys. Bob Newhart, their phraseology, the way they talk, the way they say things. You enjoy hearing the same routine over and over again, much like listening to a record,
right,
or your favorite song, just because, and it makes you laugh every time, and then you have the joy when you bring a friend and you go, here's the good part,
Right,
That's a great thing.
Norm would say, but you'd watch him on all the shows. I mean, I probably saw every TV appearance he did with Letterman or me or Conan or Jimmy or whoever, and he just had that kind of aw shucks. He could have been a character on Mayberry RFD, He was Canadian, and he had that funny Canadian... when he would say "wiener dog," Jay had one of those, the wiener dog, the wiener dog, and just the way he said "wiener dog," it was funny. I mean, he could say a word that was not funny, and when he said it, it was like the punchline of a joke.
Yeah, and it's amazing though. With you, Letterman, I think even George Carlin. When anyone asked, the top guys in town who they thought was the funniest guy in town, everybody said Norm Macdonald. Everybody.
Yeah, and it was interesting because he was almost like a jazz comedian, and that you really had to listen to him, and the people who were detractors weren't listening. They just, I remember one time the head of NBC, the president, had a daughter going to some Catholic school or something, and they wanted Norm Macdonald to perform, And he said, "Now do this, but you got to work. You got to work clean, you know." And Norm was like, "This is like red meat, you know." And he just said the most inappropriate. And literally, nuns pulling their hair out, but the audience is screaming with laughter. But I can remember Omar just barreling into my office. Talk to your friend. Lay off the OJ crap now. I'm not the boss of the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
He told
that was his thing, though. I was just going to say, Tim, and you hear it in Jade talking about it too. By the way, the take on him being sort of almost having a lyrical sense on stage is really a clean take, and when I think about it, it's so true. But he was irreverent in every way. One of the reasons that OJ thing worked is sometimes he wouldn't even do a joke. He would just transition between stories and say, and a reminder, OJ killed those two people. And then on to the next, it was just
Well, the
brilliant.
fascinating thing was he was irreverent on stage, but I think pretty conservative in real life. I mean, he was sort of outraged when people would behave a certain way or do certain things that were inappropriate. And, around his mom, he was like, "Oh, the doting son," And,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, he, truly an original. I mean, so many of us. Go ahead.
He told a great story. I bet he's told you this. Maybe he said it on your show. But when he first came out to Hollywood, like all struggling comics and actors, he was broke, and he had $3,000 left in his account. And his mom and his aunt came out from New York.
Yeah, they went to Vegas.
And they said, "Hey, let's go to Vegas." And neither one of them knew that he had a wild addiction. And so they're going to go to Vegas Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and come home Monday or Tuesday. And he got there, and while they're checking into their room, he lost all $3,000. And then he's got to, he had nothing, no food, no money for food or anything for the 4 days.
He told that story in the Tonight Show. And, of course, not mean to be rude, Tim, told it way funnier than you. I mean, first of all...
I set it up like, hey, look, he told it on your show.
I know, but you committed the cardinal sin of telling the punchline in the middle of the story. I mean, only you and my mother tell the punchline in the middle of the story. I mean, but
this is the son of one of the greatest comedians who's ever drawn breath, by the way, look, Tim Conway Jr.
I've always said I got my mom's sense of humor. I've never lied about it.
And he and his mom and his aunt, they're just standing in line to check in. He goes, "I'm going to go over here, And, like one, and as soon as his family gets to the cashier, to get their room number, he's broke. He has no money left. He blew the whole thing. I mean, he told one of the funny. He had the greatest joke. I don't do it justice, but he said, gambling is a terrible thing. A horrible addiction, but it's the only disease where you can win $1 million. And he would tell it in that sort of.
All right, hold on. All right, Jay Leno is with us. We'll have all the election results as they pour in, starting at 8:00. So don't go anywhere. And we're going to be the only ones on. All the networks, all the TV networks, have primetime programming that they're going to stick with. So KFI is going to be your only destination for up to the minute numbers. So be back here. If you got to do something, come on back, but don't miss at 8:00 because all the recall numbers will be right here. We got a whole slew of reporters out there and Mark Thompson as well. It's Conway Show. Jay Leno's with us, remembering Norm Macdonald, who passed away today. Bob, we're also remembering one of the funniest guys in the world, Norm Macdonald, and just one of the sweetest men in the world and one of the funniest guys in the world. And Jay Leno is here with us, remembering Norm Macdonald. And Norm said something. He used to come on our show, and so he would be cautious in what he said on the radio because he had to. But when you were with him playing a poker game or just, I guess, at a comedy store, he could work a little differently. And I remember he said about 5 or 6, 7 years ago, I was at Sam Simon's house, and there was a poker game going on, and Norm Macdonald was there. And somebody asked Norm, hey, Norm, would you rather die before or after your son? And Norm, without skipping a beat, said, "Oh, I'd much rather my son die before me because I'm sure I could get over my son's death, but there's no way that my son would get over mine." And and people were laughing at it because it was Norm Macdonald. But if anyone else said that, you would be like, "Well, that guy's got to get some help."
Right. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, he was truly an original. I mean, that was, everybody else wrote jokes. He talked funny. And just having a conversation with him was, even when he told a joke, he did it in such a way you think he was just talking,
Right.
I mean, he talked about, I saw him on a show. This was a joke he told. It was pretty funny. So the guy goes into this. Guy's going to story, and what kind of story? You know how he would just do that weird talking.
Right.
And he says, "Give me a." Says to the clerk, "Hey, give me a Polish sausage." And the guy says, "Oh, are you Polish?" And says, "First of all, it's very insulting. Okay, I come in for Polish. Tell you I'm Polish." He says, "If I came in and asked for a pizza, would you ask I'm Italian? If a Chinese food, you say, 'Are you Chinese?' Well, why did you ask if I was Polish?" And the guy says, "Because this is a hardware store." And it was. I mean, he told it much funnier than I told it. I don't think it was his joke, but it was one of those jokes that goes around.
Right.
But when he told it, it was just so hilarious. I mean, and it's so deadpan, and it's such a, him, Bob Newhart, just legendary guys. And he was not a guy, I tried to teach him how to drive. I had him on my show, the car show, and we went out to the racetrack out of Willow Springs, right? And okay, Norm, we gave him Alfa Romeo, Norm goes, "This is the steering wheel here?" "Yeah, that's the steering wheel, Norm." Okay, and I'm riding next to him. And he's going 18, 19 miles an hour. He goes, "Oh, this thing is pretty quick." I go, "No, it's not, Norm. You're only going 18 miles an hour." I never knew how he even got around L.A. because he never drove. So this was before Uber or anything,
Right. No, he would always ask friends for a ride. Always.
Yeah. So I said, "Well, Norm, let me show you what it can do, So I get in the car, I go a little fast. I'm going 25, 30. He's going, "Hey, whoa, hey, slow down there. Hey, take it easy. Hey, take it." I go, "No, we're going 35 miles an hour. We're on a racetrack. There's not even another vehicle on the course." And he was hilarious. And he was,
That's great.
At one point, he got it up to 50 miles an hour. He's like, "Oh, this is really flying. Hey, we're moving here now. Hey," that whole thing. And, he was just great. He was just great. He was, if you didn't know he was Norm Macdonald, you think he was just some sort of odd character,
Right.
But truly a character in the best sense of that word.
And he was a great actor too. He was on The Middle. He played, the brother of one of the main characters, and he was great.
He was a great impressionist. He did a great Burt Reynolds.
Oh, that was.
Oh yeah, right.
I mean, right down where you thought, "Is that Burt Reynolds?" He did a great Letterman. I'd never seen anybody do Letterman, and he did a great Letterman. It was really, really. I think even Letterman was like, "Whoa."
Right.
No, he was
a
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. He did Letterman, and they did a whole send up on of Letterman on that.
The saddest part of it, he's one of those guys. You just couldn't wait for him to become a cranky old man because he was a cranky young man,
Right.
And I remember Billy Crystal and I had this discussion. When we were young comedians all starting out, we used to really enjoy your dad and Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks, Rickles, the way the old comics got together, and we used to say, "Wouldn't it be great when we're older and we can be those guys?"
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool? And then when Robin died, I remember Billy Chris and I were just crying our eyes out because who wouldn't want to be around a 85-year-old Robin Williams? Sitting in a restaurant and he can't hear and he's yelling at people, and you know what I mean. And it was like, and Norm was one of those guys you just wanted to live forever, just because as a cranky young man, it was funny. As a cranky old man, it would be perfectly in character,
Yeah.
you know. And he could really then get away with anything because he was an old guy, you know.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sorry for your loss, Jay. I know it's a big.
Well, it's not just my loss.
I know, but
It's-
you knew him
it's
very
the
well.
It's the world's loss, you know.
Yeah.
It's such a sad. Oh man, you know, Gary Shandling, Rodney, Norm. I mean, you know, John Panette, and there's just so many comics that just seem to have. You know, I mean, your dad made it to pretty ripe old age,
Right,
know,
and my dad was fortunate that he got out before Corona, before COVID.
Right,
because
right.
that just dominated the news, and I would have hated to not being able to see him, because a lot of these people in the first year of that disease, of this disease, couldn't get into a home to see anybody. They all
But
died.
Norm was such a private person.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know his private life. I didn't know where he lived.
I didn't either. I don't think anybody did. I
He
mean,
was one of those guys you would see him. Isn't that Norm over there sitting at Polo Loco? Yeah, okay. And he'd be in there. Hey, his chicken's pretty good. Eh? He'd be doing all that. Yeah, it's good chicken, Norm. What are you doing here? I mean, that's where I saw him once. I was in a mall. I go, isn't that Norm Macdonald? Hey Norm. Hey, Jason, what are you doing? Hey, you want some chicken? No, I'm fine. I mean, it's just such
That's
an
great.
odd. It's just such an odd. But I just wanted to just argue with him in an old folks' home and just see him sitting on a bench observing people.
oh yeah, that would have been great.
And it's really a shame. It's really a shame. And nobody knew. I mean, think about that.
Nobody knew he was sick. Nobody.
I mean, everybody I know that has cancer tells somebody,
They tell everybody.
and they tell somebody,
Right.
And I realized it was only. Well, the year before COVID, not last year, the year before,
Yeah.
when he was on my show.
I know, it's crazy.
Obviously, he had cancer then, but he didn't. He didn't wince. He didn't. I mean,
It was unbelievable. Jay, we appreciate you coming on.
okay.
And
I'll let you go, man.
all right, we'll talk to you again soon, buddy. I'm sorry
Very cool
for
of you
your
to be
loss.
with us,
Yeah,
Jay.
that's it's horrible. I know you could hear it in Jay's voice that he knew him very well, and that's a special friend from Duluth.